Now we're going to move on to how do you solve systems of equations by using something called elimination. So it's another way to solve it algebraically. When we do elimination, we want to create opposites. Opposites are numbers like 1 and -1, 5 and -5. We like opposites because they add to 0. Some days you will already have them in the problem. Like number 1, I have a -6y and a +6y, so I'm already set up with opposites. Some problems you will have to multiply and create your own. The next step is that you will add down, we're going to solve, and then you're going to sub into the other equation and solve for the other variable. All right, so the first thing that we do is we create or find opposites. In problem number 1, this is what opposites look like. -6y and +6y. Once you have opposites, you add down. So when I add down, I'm just combining like terms. 3x and 5x adds up to 8x. -6y plus 6y adds up to 0. So that's how we just eliminated the y variable because it added up to 0. And then you add your constants or your plain numbers, and that adds up to 16. And then from here, we're just going to solve. I'm going to divide both sides by 8 and get x equals 2. It says sub that number into an original equation to solve for the other variable. Nobody cares which one of these original equations you use. Do whatever you think has easier numbers to work with. I generally go for the one with no negatives. All right, so now I'm going to plug 2 in for x. 3 times 2 plus 6y equals 48. 6 plus 6y equals 48. Oops, sorry. Subtract 6 from both sides. 6y equals 42. Divide, and y equals 7. All right, so we believe our answer is 2, 7. And the last step up there says write your solution as an ordered pair. We are going to check our work to make sure it works. So into this first equation, 5x plus 6y, I meant minus 6y equals -32. I have 5 times 2 minus 6 times 7 equals -32. 5 times 2 is 10, that's -42. 10 minus 42 is -32. That's a true statement. It has to work in both of them. You have to plug them into both. All right, so plug 2 in for x, plug 7 in for y. 3 times 2 is 6. That's 42. 6 and 42 is 48. That is a true statement. So 2, 7 is definitely my correct answer. Number 3. So when I look, I always look at my coefficients of the variables. I have a -2x and a -2x. Let's talk about the format. So when you do elimination, what's super important is that your like variables have to be stacked on top of each other and on the same side of the equal sign. So I have my x's stacked on top of each other. I have my y's stacked on top of each other, my equal signs, and then my answers or constants are on the other side on top of each other. So you do want to make sure that you start off with everything lined up. I don't have opposites, I have sames. So if I add down, this would add up to -4x. So we have to have opposites. So generally, when you have the same, you want to multiply one of your equations by -1. So when you have the same, you're going to multiply by -1. That's how we're going to get opposites. When I multiply, you're going to have to make sure you multiply all three terms by -1. That's the only way to keep your equation in balance. So -2x times -1 is a positive 2x. 5y times -1 is -5y. 7 times -1 is -7. Rewrite your second equation. Once you have opposites, now I add down. 2x plus -2x is 0. -5y plus 5y, oh, that's also 0, interesting. And then -7x plus 12 equals 5. All right, so 0 equals 5 is a false statement. This part is the same as what we did on substitution. So if you have a false statement and no variables, all the variables ended up canceling out, this one is no solution. So it's no solution because if you ended up graphing it, you would have parallel lines. Number 5. All right, so when I'm trying to figure out which ones are going to make the opposites, I look and compare the coefficients of each of the x and the y and see which one makes more sense. So to eliminate the x, it looks like that would take more work. And when you're trying to figure out which one, I think it's called the least common multiple is what you're going to get. So you would have to multiply both equations by something to get opposites. I can tell that the y's would be the easier way to go because 5 is a factor of 15. So if you multiply that bottom equation by 3, so 3 times -5 is -15, and then you already have a positive 15 on top. So this is what it looks like when you have to multiply one of the equations by something. The top equation, I'm just going to rewrite. The bottom equation, so this is also how I like it to look. I need you to show me what number it is you're multiplying by so that if you make a mistake, I can help you and adjust for that. You got to make sure that you distribute that 3 to all three terms here. So 7x times 3 is 21x. -5y times 3 is -15y. And 17 times 3 is 51. Now I have opposites right there. Once you have opposites, now you add down. -2x plus 21x adds up to 19x. 15 plus -15 adds up to 0. -32 plus 51 adds up to 19. And now I'm just going to divide and solve. So x equals 1. Once you have one of your answers, plug it into one of these original equations. Doesn't matter what you use, do whatever you think is easiest. I'm going to use the second one. It seems easier to me. So in place of that x, I'm going to plug this 1 in now. So that's why I have 7 times 1 minus 5y equals 17. Multiply and you get 7 minus 5y equals 17. Move your constants to the other side, in this case by subtracting it over. Negative 5y equals 10. Divide, and that is negative 2. You have to write all of your answers as an ordered pair. So the answer is 1, comma, negative 2. You really need to check and make sure it works in both of them. So into this top equation, plug 1 in for x and negative 2 in for y. Negative 2 times 1 plus 15 times negative 2 equals negative 32. That's negative 2, that's negative 30 equals negative 32. That is a true statement. That one works. And into the second one, so 7 times 1 minus 5 times negative 2 equals 17. Negative times negative is a plus 10. 7 and 10 equals 17. That is a true statement. Next one. All right, so when I compare 3 and 5, so 3 is not a factor of 5, so I would have to multiply both of these numbers by something to get opposites. 6 and 10. So 6 isn't a factor of 10 either, and I would have to multiply both of these numbers by something to get opposites. And so on this one, it doesn't matter. I'm going to choose to get rid of the x's, to eliminate them, mainly because these coefficients are smaller numbers than the y's, and I try to use the smallest numbers possible. So what is your opposite going to be? So the least common multiple. So it's when you count up by 3's and when you count up by 5's, what's the first number that you come to that they have in common? So that would be 15. So 15 and negative 15 are going to be my opposites. So if 15 needs to be my opposite, so what would you have to multiply the top equation by? So 3 times 5 is 15. So I'm going to multiply the top equation all by 5. And to get, so they do need to be opposite. So one needs to be 15 and one needs to be negative 15. It's also super nice here because they're already set up with opposite signs. And so when you multiply the bottom one, so 5 times what is 15? Oh, 3. So when I multiply the bottom equation, I'm also going to multiply it by positive 3 because I need one of them to be a positive and one of them to be a negative. So distribute the 5 to every term on top and distribute the 3 to every term on bottom. 3x times 5 is 15x. 6y times 5 is 30y. 9 times 5 is 45. Negative 5x times 3 is negative 15x. Negative 10y times 3 is negative 30y. And negative 15 times 3 is negative 45. I have opposites, okay, so once you have opposites, then you add down. 15 plus negative 15 is 0. 30 plus negative 30, it's also 0, okay. 45 plus negative 45 is also 0, interesting. So 0 equals 0 is a true statement. So recall that when you have a true statement and you have no variables, that the answer is infinitely many solutions. It's a graph on the same line. And let's try a word problem now. Go to the last sentence first. How much does it cost to rent a chainsaw for 1 day? That helps you define your variables right there. So X is going to be the cost to rent a chainsaw for 1 day. All right, let's read it and see what the other variable is. The cost to rent a chainsaw for 2 days and a brush clipper for 2 days is this. The cost to rent a chainsaw for 2 days and a brush clipper for 1 day is $195. How much does it cost? All right, so we're renting chainsaws, and when I read here, we're also renting brush clippers. So that means Y is going to be the cost to rent the brush clipper for 1 day. Each sentence is generally an equation. And when I say look for the totals, so each scenario gives you a total. So we're going to rent a chainsaw for 2 days, so that's the X. A brush clipper for 2 days, that's the Y. So since we're renting them for multiple days, it turns out that that is the coefficient of the variable. So 2x plus 2y equals 272. So I don't have money right here because when I solve it, that is going to be where my money is. And then the second equation gives you the second sentence gives you your second equation. I'm going to rent a chainsaw for 2 days, so that's an X. A brush clipper for 1 day, so that's my Y. Is means equals, and your total is 195. Chainsaw for 2 days. So 2x plus 1y equals 195. So now you need opposites. I have the same here, so I just need to multiply one of them by -1. I'm going to be smart, and I'm going to multiply the bottom one by -1, because if you multiply the smaller number, then you don't have to turn around and divide. All right, so I'm going to rewrite the top equation. Distribute -1 to all three terms, so that's a -2x minus 1y equals -195. Now that you have opposites, I'm going to add down. 2y plus -1y is 1y. 272 plus -195 equals $77. And y is the brush clipper. So it's $77 to rent the brush clipper for 1 day. But the point was to figure out how much the chainsaw is. So I'm just going to use the bottom equation because I have more room here. So 2x plus 1y is the same as just 77 equals 195. Solve for x, so subtract 77 over. That gives you 118. Divide, and x is $59. And that is to rent your chainsaw for 1 day. So this answers the essential question, and when you tack on the label, that assures that that tells me it's $59 to rent a chainsaw for 1 day.